And we are joined now by President Biden's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan. Welcome, Mr. Sullivan, and welcome back. We know you were on that train with President Biden going in and out of Kyiv. Can you give us a sense first of what that was like? And I was told there was a special operations team on that train to help out in case anything went wrong.
Well, first, thank you for having me, Martha. Well, we left from Washington, D.C. from a hangar at a nearby Air Force base in the middle of the night and flew to Poland, where the president got into an unmarked SUV, not his normal limo that everybody is used to seeing, to take an hour-long drive to a train station in Poland, where he boarded this train also in the dark of night. And the train had compartments to be able to work, small bunks to be able to sleep on. And of course, we had the president, a very small number of his team, including myself, and then a strong component of security. And I can't get into the specifics of who composed that security contingent, but he was well protected the whole way.
And on the F-16s, back to those F-16s, you heard what President Biden said to David Muir. He basically said he is ruling that out for now. Is it possible you'd approve them in the future?
Well, Martha, at every phase of this war, the president has tried to make sure that the Ukrainian military gets what they need. In the first phase, as they were defending Kyiv, that was Javelin anti-tank weapons and Stinger anti-air systems, and that worked. It helped Ukraine defend Kyiv. In the second phase, it was heavy artillery to help them hold against the Russians pushing in eastern Ukraine. In this phase, the critical element is ground maneuver capability, and that means tanks, armored personnel carriers, infantry fighting vehicles. And so what the president is saying is he's focused on those capabilities, and the F-16 question is a question for later.
But it's possible you could approve them later.
I mean, I can't go beyond what the president said today, which is for now, what we're focused on are the things Ukraine needs to be able to retake territory on the ground in the south and the east. And we will cross the bridge of future phases of this war when they come.
Well, just last week, Secretary Blinken told me one of the reasons you're not supplying those is because you have to teach them to fly those jets, you have to maintain those jets. So why not teach them now? So if they need them, if you want to approve it in the future, they'll have them ready to go.
From our perspective, the most important thing that we can do is make sure that we maintain focus on what is the highest priority. And honestly, Martha, the highest priority right now is to move as rapidly as possible to build up their capacity to deoccupy those portions of Ukraine that are still being occupied brutally and bloodily by Russian forces. And again, that's where the energy and the emphasis of the U.S. military is in helping the Ukrainian military get the tools it needs to be able to carry out that mission. And we expect that that will be the central focus of the Ukrainians, as well as of our support for the Ukrainians in the weeks and months ahead.
I've heard President Zelensky say speed is so important. You talk about tanks. The administration balked sending tanks over there. And just this week, the Secretary of the Army said they may not even get those tanks this year. So how is that helpful if you don't approve them in time and get the speed to get things like that over there?
I'm glad you asked this question because I think this has been the subject of some confusion. The president originally decided against sending U.S. tanks. They're called
Abrams tanks.
Abrams tanks, M1A1 Abrams tanks. He originally decided against sending them because his military told them that they would not be useful on the battlefield in this fight. What would be useful would be German tanks, a tank called the Leopard, which many different European countries have. But the Germans told the president that they would not be prepared to send those Leopards into the fight. And those Leopards are arriving now, Martha, until the president also agreed to send Abrams. So in the interests of alliance unity and to ensure that Ukraine got what it wanted, despite the fact that the Abrams aren't the tool they need, the president said, okay, I'm going to be the leader of the free world. I will send Abrams down the road if you send Leopards now. Those Leopards are getting sent now, and this is actually an example of Joe Biden rallying the global coalition to get Ukraine what it needs.
Okay, just again, those tanks, the Abrams tanks, which she said will go in now, will not be there this year, according to the Secretary of the Army. Let's move on. The administration has also warned China not to offer lethal military assistance to Russia. What can you share about what China could do?
Well, all I can say is what you've heard from Secretary of State, you've heard from other officials in the administration, and you just heard from President Biden, which is we have at this point not seen them take the step of providing weapons to Russia for purposes of the war in Ukraine. We are watching closely. We know they haven't taken it off the table, and we are sending a clear message, as are our European allies, that this would be a real mistake because those weapons would be used to bombard cities and kill civilians, and China should want no part of that.
So despite that warning, you've seen no indication at this point that China is backing off. It could still happen.
Well, it's hard for me to say backing on, backing off. What I can say is so far we have not seen them do it.
And I want to ask you one final question about China, the Chinese spy balloon. I want to go back to that. Clearly, that was for surveillance. You've said that. But there were also those 3 weather balloons shot down very quickly. You said they were a threat to civil aviation. Since then, no weather balloons have been shot down. Is that because you recalculated the radar once again, or you just no longer consider weather balloons a threat, even though there are hundreds of them right now across the U.S.?
My understanding is that the NORAD commander, the general in charge of the defense of North American airspace, has not recalibrated our radar, that we continue to be vigilant for unidentified objects coming into U.S. territory. What we did do at President Biden's direction, Martha, is put in place a set of policy parameters for when we would take lethal action against an object to shoot it down as opposed to deal with it in other ways. In the case of those 3, the president received a recommendation from his senior military advisors, including the NORAD commander, to take action out of an abundance of caution, and he acted. And since then, he has asked the entire national security enterprise to put together a plan, an operational plan to ensure that we can protect our airspace against other potential threats, either to civil aviation or to intelligence, or in the extreme case, to people on the ground.
Okay, thanks very much for joining us this morning, Mr. Sullivan. We always appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.